Welcome back to the Diversity Project. I am your host, Rhonda Kulch, and on today's episode, we are speaking with industry professionals that help us to avoid financial pitfalls, especially with where we are in today's society. 2021 could become a very challenging year for a multitude of reasons, and therefore we have brought in special guest attorney Lee Friedman. Of course, Friedman and Associates, they're currently located in Hauppauge. They're a family-friendly law firm specializing in real estate transactions, foreclosure matters, as well as bankruptcy. And that's where we're going to segue to. So welcome, Lee. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, we never really want to speak about people that are experiencing financial challenges. It's emotional, it's devastating, but inevitably 2021, I am sure, is going to be, I want to say, a stellar year for you. And I don't mean that in a, congratulations kind of way, right?
Yeah. I mean, in theory, unfortunately, with what's gone on in 2020, especially what's going on with the mortgage forbearance that theoretically is over December 31st, come January 1, people are going to have to start making their mortgage payments again. People are really going to have to consider what their options are moving forward, both with their house and their general debt situations.
So let's talk about, we'll break this down, in the time that we have. So you mentioned the mortgage forbearance. So the people that are currently not paying their mortgage, they've been temporarily put on a forbearance. We had another guest in earlier today, Karen Clark. She was talking a little bit in reference to what she's expecting that market to look like. So what happens when the forbearance is over and it's January 1st and they haven't saved the money, they have maybe not gone back to work? What is your recommendation at that point?
Well, the problem is we don't know exactly what the lenders are going to do. We know essentially that the government-backed loan programs are likely going to put those months at the end of the loan. There are some other banks, such as Bank of America, who've already indicated that if there's loans that they personally own, they're going to do that too. But I think that you bring up a very good point. That is also presuming that they could start to make their regular mortgage payment again. People are still unemployed or underemployed, which means that they cannot make their regular mortgage payment. So it's not just worrying about those past payments. It's about moving payments, the payments that are moving forward. So really what it becomes is you have to look at your full debt situation, your full income situation, and decide what you need to do to position yourself best to keep your home, keep your possessions. Unfortunately, and I don't take it lightly, some people, and there's going to be a lot of people, who are going to have to explore bankruptcy as an option just because they need to essentially clear the decks. So because they're underemployed now or unemployed, and that they could once they are employed, they can move forward.
Now, when somebody's thinking about, bankruptcy, use that as an option. A lot, again, we talk about finances and it's so emotional, right? And it's so personal. And people are so embarrassed by how they've gotten themselves into these positions. When somebody contacts your law firm, for example, what is their first step?
Their first step is really getting a hold of what their income and what their expenses are. Especially people, because I deal a lot with people who have issues with mortgages, they haven't budgeted properly. So what happens is that, let's say you fall behind on your mortgage. Instead of keeping the same budget or budgeting for having a mortgage payment, they are then making it as if that's extra income for them to pay for other stuff. Mm-hmm. So I've had plenty of opportunities to have clients, or unfortunately have had clients that have said to me, after getting them a modification of their mortgages, saying, I don't know if I can make my mortgage payment because I have 2 BMW payments coming up. Things like that. It's absolutely 100% fact. So what happens is that people have, even if you are unemployed or underemployed, let's say your mortgage payment is $2,500 a month. They were not budgeting properly. Let's say you could only afford $1,000 a month. Well, you should have taken that $1,000 and putting it aside for a rainy day or having to start again. These people have $0 left over. So really, when it comes to the bankruptcy consultation, even though there's a stigma for bankruptcy, especially Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which would be, a dissolution bankruptcy where they wipe out all your creditors, people have to really face the fact that they haven't either budgeted well, they don't have enough money, and, we have to do this in order to wipe this slate clean for them so they can move forward, afford their mortgage payments, etc.
Now, I know I've also heard of people where they get to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy so they could actually protect their assets and save their home.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
Sure. So Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and the way that I explain it is people hear a lot about Chapter 11 bankruptcies and companies. So essentially it's a personal repayment plan. So what it is it's a reconfiguration, a reorganization of your debts, so you could theoretically pay back any arrears you might have over up to a 60-month period. So your assets are protected, and the court gives you the opportunity to pay them back. Unfortunately, most of my clients are unsuccessful in Chapter 13s. Reason being, you have to keep up with your regular obligations. So let's say you have a $2,500 a month mortgage payment. You have to make the $2,500 a month plus 1/60th of the arrears plus a 10% fee to the trustee. Now, if you're having a hard time making your $2,500 a month payment, it's definitely impossible for you to make the trustee's payment above and beyond that. And that's why we sort of have to explore all different options for keeping assets, protecting assets, and liquidating if need be.
I've had people personally that I've dealt with, personal clients of mine, where they actually don't meet the threshold of a Chapter 13 because they've either had too much debt or made too much money. Is there... when somebody comes to you, is there times where just maybe settling debt or, looking at some kind of an alternative, just a better method?
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to Chapter 7s, there is a means test. So you have to show you don't have the means to pay it at all. Because let's say you have $1,000 of unsecured debt. If you even though you can't afford $1,000, if after we run the math and you could afford $300 a month, you wouldn't be theoretically eligible for that Chapter 7. You would have to do a Chapter 13. You might be better off. You might be better off reaching out to individual creditors and seeing if you could settle them, because a lot of them, especially nowadays, they'll settle pennies on the dollar. A lot of times, the loan is, especially if you're very delinquent, is not the original creditor. A debt buyer bought it for pennies on the dollar, so you might be able to, for pennies on the dollar, either pay them off in a lump or enter into a repayment plan to pay them off in full, and that way you can avoid the adverse effects of a bankruptcy. And if you really don't, on paper you might have affordability, but we don't pay, we don't pay our bills with gross dollars. We pay our bills with net dollars. So at the end of the day, it really depends on what you end up with, and that might be a better option, just to settle out individual debts as opposed to filing bankruptcy.
So now if somebody picked up the phone and they decided to call the law office and they're just having a tremendous amount of financial problems, it's a combination of everything that we've spoken about. Who's the person that sits with them and actually creates a plan of action and helps them to understand what the strategy needs to be to move forward?
Ordinarily, it's me, because you have to take it, everything in its own separate. You have to compartmentalize it. So there is unsecured debt, like credit card debt, where you don't have a judgment yet. Maybe you're still current or you just fell behind. That's one type of debt. You have a mortgage debt. Are you current? Are you behind? Are you in forbearance? Do you have medical bills? You have to sort of compartmentalize it. And then, sometimes I work with, Rhonda's clients, I work with your clients in order to, because a lot of what you do has to do with budgeting. And if we could budget properly, we could set them up. So let's say it might be just a mortgage modification or working on the mortgage, and all the other stuff can be dealt with a proper budget.
Sure.
And with debt settlement, things like that. So really, in order to take a holistic approach, that's why I am the primary person who sits down with the potential client.
Now, I know you also handle real estate transactions, and I know that we're running low on time. Your office is the office that I actually refer my business to for short sales. So I'm assuming that, if people are listening and they have financial problems, they were considering filing a bankruptcy, they are buying or selling a home, or they have a short sale, this is your hub of specialty.
Yes. And as far as short sales are concerned, that is also another good vehicle to avoid bankruptcy, to essentially wipe the slate clean and improve your position by ridding yourself of a housing debt that you simply cannot afford.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lee, for coming in today. Always a pleasure when we can share some educational opportunities with the people that are listening to our show. Again, we are in studio with Lee Friedman, attorney located in Hauppauge. Please stay tuned for our final guest. You are listening to The Diversity Project.
Thank you.